All right, welcome, my friends, to episode 670 of Extreme Health Radio. Thanks for being here, guys. If you're unfamiliar, we broadcast live on Friday mornings. Let me turn this music down a little bit so we can hear. Every Friday morning at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. And today we have our resident expert, our mineral expert, Morley Robbins. I'm going to introduce him in just a second. He is the preeminent guy and health researcher on minerals, my friends, and minerals run the entire show of our body. And so if you have everything right, but your minerals are out of balance, your body's not going to work right. So it's really important to make sure that your copper iron balance and ratios are where they need to be. So we'll introduce him in just a second. If you want to get the show notes for today's show, any links that we talk about, anything like that, I'll put everything over at extremehealthradio.com/670. And that's where I'll put all the documentation, links to his website, links to the sponsors, and all that good stuff. We have a lot of cool guests coming up. Like I mentioned before, we broadcast every Friday. Let me give you a little rundown of our upcoming show schedule. Lots of cool people. I'm just super thrilled to be able to offer information like this to the masses. It's great. So today, obviously, Morley Robbins will be talking about immunometabolism, probably a word that you may or may not have heard before. Next Friday, we're going to have George Wiseman talking about Brown's gas and hydrogen, as well as, Dr. Seth Gerlach. This is going to be a fun show, September 18th with Dr. Seth Gerlach. We're going to talk about vaccine ingredients. We've done a lot of shows on vaccines, and there's a lot of different angles, sort of like Big C, Little V, but we're going to talk specifically about the ingredients in vaccines and the damaging effects that they can have. So that'll be kind of cool. Friday after that, we're going to have Brian Hoyer. We'll be talking with him about EMF protection, 5G wireless protection, what that does to your cell membranes and how to protect yourself from that. And then Sophia Smallstorm, a health researcher extraordinaire. She's really cool. We're going to talk with her the next Friday after that. So all of that being said, make sure to subscribe to our show so that you don't miss any of these episodes. It's just awesome to be able to offer information like this that offers hope to people. And I think that's what's sorely lacking. And so I'm really happy to see other podcasts and other people producing content that gives people hope and other options. So this is what our whole goal is here at Extreme Health Radio. So thanks, guys, for joining us. So today, this is going to be like if we're in a fight, it would be round number 7 with Mr. Morley Robbins, the 7th time he's been on the show. If you're unfamiliar with him, he received his BA in biology from Denison University in Ohio, holds an MBA from George Washington University, and he's the man behind, he was formerly known as the Magnesium Man, but he's still... now he's the Iron Man, Magnesium Man. We'll call him Mineral Man. The guy and the main person behind the Root Cause Protocol, which I refer everybody to get on his protocol. So the Root Cause Protocol is available at rcp123.org, which I'd highly recommend you signing up to. It's free. He gives away the entire protocol. So make sure to go to rcp123.org. And I think, and I keep telling people this, that Morley Robbins is the preeminent person. We've done 670 shows, and I can't think of anyone who's more important in the health industry and the natural healing industry than Morley Robbins. So let me introduce him, turn his microphone on. There we go. Morley, how are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm looking for the blush button on my computer right now.
Well, this is round number 7, so...
I can't believe it.
That's great.
I thought this was like our 4th talk. I had no idea it was number 7. That's great.
Yeah, it's so
Thank you
cool.
for all those opportunities. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome anytime. And for those that don't know, Morley sends me these crazy articles to read and all about the health research he's doing and all kinds of cool stuff. And this is, we hadn't talked in 3 or 4 months. He mentioned before the show, and he's learned so much information in the last. All you do is research. It's crazy.
Well, I do have a life, but I love the research, and actually, we probably haven't talked since the Chinese export. Yeah, it's been a while. Mm-hmm. And so what I've done is I've taken advantage of this time. I remember the fateful day in March when I was kicked out of Starbucks because they were closing. Mm-hmm. And then there was a period where I could only go to their drive-through, and I would read in the parking lot. And then I entered the period where I could read outside the store. And I've been doing that for a couple months. But this coming Monday, apparently on Labor Day, they're going to let us back inside. So I'll be a real terror then. But what I've really been studying is, in light of all of this foment about
Uh-huh.
COVID-19, about COVID 1984,
Yeah.
is how does the immune system really work? And I was always fascinated by um, parasites.
Mm-hmm.
And what tipped me off that the whole dynamic with COVID 1984 was a parasite
Mm-hmm.
was when President Trump made a comment about HCQ,
Uh-huh.
hydroxychloroquine. Now, what most people don't know is one of the things I was studying was malaria. It's, the number of malaria deaths per hour exceed the number of deaths that have occurred in this entire tragedy.
It's
And it
crazy,
just,
isn't it?
it absolutely is insane. But
Yeah.
we don't need to go there because we'll get this video shut down if we're not
Right.
careful.
Right.
But I think that actually happened the last time, didn't it? They took it off the
Yeah.
airwaves.
Yeah, they did.
So I'll take full responsibility for that. But the important thing for people to know is that malaria is a serious problem in India, and it's very carefully studied. I don't think they pay much attention to bioavailable copper,
Mm-hmm.
but in any event, people who have healthy ceruloplasmin, the bioavailable form of copper, when they have healthy levels of that, they don't get malaria. But the people who have unhealthy levels of ceruloplasmin
Mm-hmm.
take hydroxychloroquine for the rest of their life. So I know that hydroxychloroquine has a very key role in managing iron
Mm-hmm.
and iron overload. And it's used, and just as they've pointed out, it's been used for 65 years. It used to be called quinine.
Uh-huh.
And so quinine is it's a root. It goes back to antiquity, and
Yeah.
it's important to deal with iron overload. But the key part of this is people don't really understand how their immune system works, and I think it's important that they kind of unpack that, and that's what we're going to do in our time together.
Mm-hmm.
And so the word that's the title for this conversation is a big one: immunometabolism. It's like, what the heck does that mean?
What does that mean?
Well, yeah. So immune system runs on energy. That's really what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And what we'll get into in a minute is how important mitochondrial function is for the immune system, both the innate and the acquired. And it's really important for people to realize that the ability of our immune system to make energy really determines our ability to stay healthy. And it's very basic, and we have layers and layers of response in our body to fight off infections and to fight off imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
And what's been really tragic is no one's talking about that on the internet,
Mm-mm.
particularly as it relates to this Chinese export.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the problem, but no one's really talking about our internal innate ability to solve it.
So Morley, a lot of people will say, especially in the alternative health industry, they'll say, well, 80% of your immune system is in your gut, so just build your gut flora and everything's fine, right? But it's so multi-layered and so much more than that, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and what I really do understand now is why the gut is so important,
Mm-hmm.
and the gut flora are communicating with our brain. That's a big deal.
Uh-huh.
But there's also there's a class of enzymes that come by way of bacteria, that come by way of our gut, and they're called multi-copper oxidases.
Okay.
Well, there's 1,000 different forms of those in our gut, and that's what they're talking about when they say 80% of the immune system's in your gut. Well, that's what they're really talking about. These enzymes that are able to slice and dice oxygen.
So certain bacteria in our gut will make these enzymes. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, so if you don't have the correct bacteria, then you don't make those enzymes. Or can they be made by
Well,
other bacteria?
that's a good question. I'm not sure I know that. But it isn't just that you have these bacteria, it's that these bacteria are being fed properly.
Ah,
And they need minerals.
okay.
It's really, really important. And so a lot of people may know about soil and how soil works, and that the topsoil is above the dirt, right? And
Uh-huh.
there's a difference between soil and dirt. Dirt dirt doesn't have any life in it. It's just like dust.
Right.
But but soil has microbes and minerals. And it's the microbes that are putting the minerals into the root system of the plant. So they get into the plant, so they get into the human. But if you don't know about the importance of having microbes, and if you don't know the importance about feeding the microbes, well, then you're not making food that is really going to support anyone's health. And that I think the organic farmers know this better than the commercial farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very important that the microbes in the soil are very similar to the microbes in our gut. Again, they got to be fed. They got to have access to the right minerals in order to generate energy and in order to attack the pathogens. And it's so incredibly simple. It's mind-numbing.
Yeah.
It's like, that's it?
That's
Come
it.
on. Yeah. And so there's I think what I've really tried to do in this hiatus is really pull the curtain back and say, what's really going on? What's truly running the machinery of our immune system?
Mm-hmm.
And we can get into some really esoteric stuff, which we're not going to, because there's just layers and layers and layers. But at the end of the day, the immune system runs on energy. That's it.
Well, I mean,
And
doesn't
people need to understand that.
this is the heart of your protocol, right? The rcp123.org. And I'd recommend, guys, for the value, go to his website, go to rcp123.org, sign up. It's free. He gives away the entire protocol. You just put your name and email, download it. But this is the entirety of health, right? Because without energy, nothing, literally just nothing works, right? So you have to build that energy in the mitochondria and ATP for the body to work right, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Everyone's familiar with Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared.
Mm-hmm.
And we pretend like we know what that means, right? Energy and mass, speed of light. I
Something.
don't really care. So this guy named Douglas Wallace, who's a world-renowned geneticist, explained it in a way that no one ever had before. And he says, you got energy and structure. That's it.
That's it.
E is energy, and mc squared is structure.
Okay.
And his point, he's a PhD geneticist, and he's the guy that figured out that it's the mitochondrial genes that get passed from mother to child.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. And it was his genius that allowed us to figure out the lineage back to, I think it's like 7 different tribes or whatever it is. The guy's like off the
Wow.
chart,
Yeah.
crazy smart. But the important thing is that he talks about one of the blind spots of conventional medicine, and he's big researcher at Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
But he talks about the blind spot of conventional medicine is they don't understand energy deficiency. Like, huh? And so his whole point is that once the cells and the tissue can't make energy, their structure changes. And where does the change first start? In the genes. They don't they don't work right, but they don't have the right kind of energy. And again, it's the vibration of the
Wow.
cell and the tissue that determines everything's okay or everything's not okay. And it's this very subtle vibration that we put out when we are producing optimal energy.
So
It's
Morley,
absolutely fascinating.
what you said is so, I think what you said right there, people can overlook. So if there's not enough energy, then what Dr. Wallace is saying is that the actual genetic expression or the gene itself changes its physical structure.
Yes. And
Wow.
its physical expression. And so then when the expression changes, it's like when we smile at each other, that means something. But if I started glowering at you, would you react a little differently?
Of course.
Of course you would. It's just like with your kids. You know, if daddy has a happy face on, they're pretty excited. If daddy doesn't have a happy face on, it's not as much fun, right? So the thing is, the body responds to these subtle cues of what's going on. And what's the energy, what's the frequency that's being expressed in this tissue? Very, very important. And the immune system keys off of that energy. And so here's a really graphic example. Everyone knows about heart attacks. You know, it's #1 cause of death on the planet. Has been since 1910. #1 cause of death. So what causes it? Well, the conventional view is we've got a block in the artery, and so that causes the blood to stop, and there's no oxygen, and the tissue dies.
Right.
So we'll pretend that that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
And because it's more complicated, and two guys, Beraldi and Silver, figured it out in 2013, but we don't need to go there. But the important thing is, when the heart muscle, it has a bunch of cells, heart muscle cells, and each one of those cells has 10,000 mitochondria. Each cell has 10,000 mitochondria. Okay, and if they're not able to express energy properly, and if they can't recycle cholesterol properly, that cholesterol becomes what's called a foam cell. And then that foam cell starts to calcify. And that's the very start of what's called plaque. People have heard of that, arterial plaque.
Right.
Guess what triggers the whole thing? It's iron. Iron starts the lipid peroxidation that starts to mess up the endothelial layer of the artery, and that starts to change the structure and design of the artery. And what's the plaque for? It's trying to repair itself. It's incredible. It's a complete alteration of what we've been trained to think. But the whole thing starts with lack of energy.
So
once the cells can't make energy, they can't function right. Go ahead.
No, so that's why you see people, indigenous people around the world with cholesterol levels in the 300 and 400s, right? And they seem to be living perfectly well. Their cholesterol is just not oxidizing, right? They have enough energy.
Ding, ding, ding. That's it. That's everything.
Wow.
The cholesterol is not oxidizing. And what most people don't know is, well, what's different about certainly Western culture, but more specifically United States culture? They started adding iron filings to the wheat flour in 1941. And then they increased it 50% in 1969. And that caused a lot of lipid peroxidation. I've got an article from two guys, I think they're in London, Cheng, Cheng, and Li, Li, from 2007. Justin, it will blow your mind.
Why? What is it?
How much? It's talking about how iron causes all lipid peroxidation. And lipid peroxidation is the match to light the fuse of all conditions on the planet.
Hey, Morley, can you send that to me? He says that iron is the cause of all lipid peroxidation?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll be happy to send it. I'll be happy to send it to you.
That's huge.
There's figure after figure after figure, like, wow, this is, I've been looking for this for like 10 years. And it's like, it makes so much sense. And it gets, just to warn the listeners, it gets pretty esoteric. I mean, it's like we're getting into the bowels of biochemistry, but it's like, oh my God, this iron thing is really bad. And
So,
nobody talks about it.
oh, of course. Well, first of all, so I was wondering before about what you said. I mean, 1969, that was 51 years ago. How do we know they haven't put more iron in our food? Do we know that? Maybe they have. Who knows?
I'm going to pretend you didn't say that.
I mean,
How would you know? The only
yeah.
reason why we know about 1941 and 1969 is because a guy named Jim Moon, who's a metal, he's no longer living, but he
Hmm.
was an iron toxicologist up in Canada, wrote a book called Iron, the Most Toxic Metal. And it's a tell-all book that is mind-blowing. And we wouldn't have known about 41 and 69 if he hadn't brought it to our attention. Now,
Well,
how he found out about it, I don't know, but no one else is talking about it these days.
I mean, isn't it also true that iron's sort of being liberated in the soils more through acid rain and stuff? So, I mean, it's getting into the food more just from that reason alone, right?
You're a smart cookie. That's exactly right. Yeah, the acid rain is really very toxic, and it's allowing the uptake of iron in a much bigger way. Absolutely true.
So, Morley, going back
Because,
to what you said.
but Justin, wait! Don't you understand? Everyone's anemic.
Oh, yeah, of
Everyone's
course. Yeah.
anemic. They need more iron, right?
Yeah. Got to have more iron, of course. Yeah. Um, going back to what you said, I think is so probably the crux of so many things. If iron causes all lipid peroxidation, then is it possible to ingest lipids, polyunsaturated fats, and things like this if a body only has, if it has the right amount of iron, where those lipids will not become oxidized, do you think? If there's not too much
Well,
iron? That's huge.
so uh, at the risk of losing people, you've heard of prostaglandins,
Uh huh.
arachidonic acid. Really, it's a really toxic form of lipid peroxidation. Well, if you have bioavailable copper, that whole pathway changes, and it doesn't become a problem.
Hmm.
So again, if you had two levers and you're trying to make the world sick, what would you do? Well, you'd pull back on copper
Uh-huh.
and you'd go forward on iron,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what they've done.
How do
And
we
so when
know that I think I've heard you mention in previous shows that the iron or the copper availability around the world has been decreasing, I think, by 80%. Is that actually true?
Yeah, I should have that citation. It's actually, I learned of it from Ben Edwards, who's a physician over in Lubbock, Texas. He's got the actual citation. It's Nancy somebody.
Okay.
I can get that for you because it's a very important citation for people to be aware of, that there has been this loss of copper in the soil, and it's only been intensified by the use of glyphosate, which we know chelates copper down to a pH of 1. So
Hmm.
nothing stops glyphosate from taking copper from the soil, from the plant, from the animal, and from the human.
So what does
It's
it
a
mean,
human
Morley,
nature
that
thing.
copper, because a lot of people think, oh, I'll just take more copper, but we need to build our liver and to be able to utilize and store and create ceruloplasmin so that copper is bioavailable. So just taking copper, it's a lot more complex than that. But what happens when the copper gets chelated down to a pH of 1? What does that mean? Does it mean it doesn't become bioavailable?
Well, you, you you can't make energy,
Ah,
and you can't neutralize what are called oxidants. So you have an oxygen molecule. Everybody knows that
uh-huh.
oxygen. Oh, it's O2,
Okay.
and when there's an accident with oxygen, it's called an oxidant. So if you want to spell it differently so you remember it, it's OXYDENTS, oxidants,
Okay.
dense in the oxygen. And they become very reactive. And when they mix with iron, they become hyperreactive,
Mm.
incredibly reactive. And so maybe this would be a good time to go to those slides I sent you, because this will help reinforce what we're trying to say about energy, and then we can bring it back to the immune system
Yeah,
uh,
let's do
in
that.
the time that
So
we've got.
For those, Morley sends me the most awesome information that he runs across, and it's so cool. But really quickly, before we get to the slides, let me just show you this, guys. And I'll put this in the show link too. Let's see. Let me bring this up. This is that book that Morley was talking about, Iron, the Most Toxic Metal. It's available on Amazon. And I'll put a link to it.
I've read this book 4 times. And I'm
Wow.
going to read it again a 5th time before September's out.
Oh my gosh.
I learn something new every time I read it.
Okay, guys, let's go to the slides that Morley was talking about. Oh, whoops. You know what? Oh, here we go. It's over here. What am I doing? Okay, here we go. Is this the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
There we go.
So why don't we pan out a little bit so if you can
like
do
this.
that a little bit.
Like
That's
that
perfect.
a little bit?
Okay.
Is that good?
And
okay, so for those that are listening on audio, you can look at what Morley's talking about. We're 26 minutes in at extremehealthradio.com/670, just so you know.
Yeah. All right. So one of my dear friends is a pastor. His name is Joey Foster, and he has this phrase, missing information equals missing truth. And it's so important.
Yeah.
And so this is a very busy slide for people. And I try not to overwhelm people, but I think it's important to understand the real basics. Let's pan out just a little bit more if we can.
Let's do that. So we can get kind of a, like that?
Yeah, that's good. Perfect. Okay, that's perfect. Perfect.
Good.
That's great. So this is a very important slide from a very important article from 2018 about neurodegeneration by Dr. Trist and his colleagues.
Okay.
And what we're seeing, you see 5 little blue blobs at the very top in what's called the IMM. And we're inside the mitochondria.
Okay.
And those Roman numerals 1 through 5 are the 5 different complexes that are found in the mitochondria.
Okay.
And this diagram is really highlighting a lot of key functions that take place inside the mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll see is a bunch of green circles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we were looking at a standard high school biochemistry textbook or biology textbook, and they were talking about the mitochondria, they might tell you that Roman numeral 4, complex 4, requires copper. Well, that's where the most important function is it turns oxygen into water so we can make energy.
Okay.
Most important function.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been chipping away at this for a couple of years now. But all of the items that are circled in green require copper. And that's not in the standard, it's not in textbooks.
So
this
the textbooks
anywhere.
So the textbooks will just say that it's primarily in complex 4, but what you're saying is copper is required in every step, every of this chain.
Absolutely. And it's absolutely it's important for people to step back and really take stock of, wow, so they've not told us the whole truth. And if you have missing information, then you have missing truth. And so if you don't understand how one mitochondria works, how could you possibly understand how the immune system works? Because it runs on mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
And in the lower left-hand corner is a smaller version of the entire mitochondria that people might recognize. It's kind of an oval shape, and it's got what looks like a swimming pool in the center.
Uh-huh.
And then what you'll see inside this, the burst, the red burst, is 50,000. Well, it turns out there's supposed to be 50,000 atoms of copper inside every mitochondria in our body.
50,000.
Well, yeah. So people are like, okay, I need a bunch of copper in my mitochondria. So what people need to now know is that you have 40 quadrillion mitochondria in your body.
My gosh.
Wait a minute, quadrillion. I've never heard that word before. Because we've heard billion, we've heard trillion. This is quadrillion. And so that's 15 zeros.
Jeez.
So get out your calculator, 40 times 15 zeros times 50,000 atoms. That's a lot of copper.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of copper. And you know who talks about all of this copper being so important for the mitochondria?
No, who?
In medical schools?
Oh, in medical school?
In medical schools? Nobody. This is not taught in medical school. Why? Because copper is akin to Voldemort at Hogwarts Academy. Copper in medical school is that which cannot be named. And Douglas Wallace's point in his article from 2005 is there's a blind spot in medicine around energy deficiency. And here's the bottom line. Doctors of all faiths and persuasion, doesn't matter what their degree or training is, they don't know how to measure they don't know how to measure energy, and they don't know how to make energy. Why? Because they've never heard the word copper in their training. And the mitochondria is all about using copper to make energy. And it's the most foundational aspect of life on the planet, is being able to work with oxygen to make energy. And if we can't do that, you're stuck. Pretty basic.
Oh my gosh. So Morley, we're going to take a little break right now. This is just amazing stuff, guys. I hope you are gathering and understanding the enormity of all this. This is just amazing. This is episode 670. Morley Robbins' website is rcp123.org. And when we come back from the break, I want to ask Morley sort of a question that's aside from this, but I want to go through the next slides as well. But the question I have for Morley after this is, I'm trying to donate some blood, and I did it last February, and I'd like to do it again, but I want to know from you, Morley, maybe we can tackle this later in the Q&A or something, about this COVID stuff. And I don't want to be tested for COVID, but I still want to get blood, so I got to ask you about that. So Morley Robbins, rcp123.org is his website. Make sure to check him out and sign up, guys. I'm telling you, Morley's one of them. He's got to be probably the most prolific and important person in natural health. If you understand minerals, you understand energy. If you understand energy, we can't make any claims, but the body works better. All right, so we're going to do a little break right now, and I got Ken Rolla talking about dirty electricity in the walls, and these affect your cell membranes, and it's really, really important. We had Magda Havas on the show talking about how dirty electricity affects blood sugar levels. We've had Professor Martin Paul talking about the breakdown of the cell membrane and what happens when calcium floods to the inside of the cell too much in much more abundant ways than it should. And all this is caused by EMF, dirty electricity, stuff like that. So here's Ken Rolla talking about specifically the dirty electricity in your walls.
Dirty electricity, what that does and what it is actually for people that aren't aware is when the power company is generating electricity and sending it to you, they don't have a constantly perfect, steady supply of 120 volt, 60 hertz electricity pulsing to you perfectly every time. It fluctuates quite a bit, and if you put meters on it, you can see it'll fluctuate. And so that fluctuation, and there are micro fluctuations as well. And those micro fluctuations, all that fluctuation creates these pulses in the wiring that will create EMF pulses around you. I mean, the wires themselves, when electricity is flowing through them, that will create a field around the wires that can affect you. But then when you've got all that little pulsing and micro pulsing going on, it's creating these frequencies of fields that are pulsing and affecting you negatively. And so those devices like the Greenwave, they will act like an inductor and smooth that signal out so you don't get that pulsing. And then my devices, because of the scalar fields, they will structure the EMF coming off of the wires in your house and everything else as well. I use those. I use Stetzer filters and Greenwave. I got both.
So, guys, a good sort of solution to all of this dirty electricity. We had Brian Hoyer come to our house a while back, and he measured the dirty electricity coming off. You have magnetic frequency and electrical frequency coming off these wires that aren't properly insulated. And so for some reason, when they build houses, I don't know why they didn't, properly insulate the wirings, but this is a real problem. And he measured, it was just tons coming off our walls. And then when you plug in one of these Greenwave filters, it actually brings that down, I think around 97, 98%. And so this is really important to do. So I would recommend getting one, at least for maybe where you sleep, or maybe your kid's room, or maybe, where you work. You can put these things in. They're about $30 for one, and it's one of the best investments in your health because you're altering your environment to become less toxic. And I don't know why. I wish they didn't build our homes in such a toxic way, but putting these around your home would be just a really good idea to do. And then we have Dr. Judy Mikovits, and she's been making quite a stir lately about, she's been, all over the place. But here she is talking about jumping up and down on a mini trampoline for your lymphatic health. This is something that I do every single day outside, and it's a great way to improve your lymphatic system of your body.
And let's think about the simplest thing. I used to do one of those rebounders for exercise back in the 80s and things like that. And it's a wonderful way to move your lymphatics because a lot of these toxins simply clog up the highways. Think about LA. That's why I take the train, because you can't get there from here. There's so much road construction, narrowing down to 3 lanes here and there. That blocks it all up. That's with the lymphatics. That's with the blood. That's why we see all this swelling and inflammation. And then all of these toxins are talking to the cells that say, I have to go repair. And overdoing repair causes cancers because you need to turn that off.
Yeah, Dr. Mikovits is going through a heck of a lot of stuff right now with all of, being as outspoken as she is. Just a great lady, and perhaps we'll have her on the show again. She was really great. But what she's talking about is jumping up and down on one of these little Jane Fonda 1975 leg warmer trampolines. But, I like to do this, and I like to surf. I like to hike. I like to lift weights. I like to be outside, and it's not what it used to be. And jumping up and down is a longevity exercise. It helps us to open and close your millions of one-way valves in your lymphatic system. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of our toxins that we're exposed to, get stored. And what's great is that jumping up and down, the G-force, you're putting so much pressure at the bottom of the balance. And then when you go back up, it opens and flushes your body. So it helps to reduce lactic acid. I like to do it after a workout. And if I have the option, I like to do a workout and then jump up and down on a rebounder and then do a little sauna session. But as it is now, I don't get to do that. But yeah, jumping up and down on Bellicon. This is the rebounder we recommend. I used to get the really cheap ones, from Walmart, and I went through 4 or 5 of those and just figured, I need to just pony up and buy a real rebounder. These things are just amazing. It feels like you're jumping on air. They're silent. You can do it when your kids are sleeping. You can fold the legs and store it easily underneath your bed or something. And if you're worried about balance, there's little bars you can buy as accessories, and you can kind of make it look like however you want. Just a great longevity tool and exercise. It's sort of health discipline you can do, is jumping up and down. And I truly recommend it. I mean, there's a reason why these rebounders are in like a lot of the natural cancer clinics, because they're really, really great for your immune system. So check these out. Everything that we mentioned today is available at extremehealthradio.com/670 or biochargeme.com. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, there should be links in the description. And also, I'll tell you guys later about a bunch of sales that are going on right now for Labor Day. So if you guys are interested in getting some good discounts and things like that, I'll tell you more about that later. But check out and consider getting one of these Bellicon Rebounders. One of the best health tools that I've ever had, and they're just a great way to keep on top of your health and make sure that your body's working properly and all that. And there's a little video of this on Instagram that I put, and you'll see it right now.
You're listening to Extreme Health Radio, and I hope you're enjoying this show. Please share it with your friends by tagging at Extreme Health Radio on Instagram. Stay tuned for new shows weekly.
There it is, some eggs, getting some retinol, some true vitamin A into my body. I love eggs for that. And there I am jumping up and down on the rebounder, and that's sort of how I do it, is I jump up like that, and I get full spectrum sunlight. And so let me bring Morley back up. And Morley, eggs are a great source of retinol, which helps build copper, right? Is that correct?
Well, got to understand what was the chicken eating.
That's true.
No, it
all matters.
Here's the thing. We've heard the expression, we are what we eat, right? Well, it turns out we are what we eats, and can assimilate. So if the chicken's eating grass and bugs, we're golden. That's good. And the yolks of a chicken should be orange, not yellow.
Orange,
and when they're orange, then when you know they're orange, you're getting a lot of good carotenoids, which are going to be the retinol that you're looking for.
Now, those carotenoids, are they different than obviously what's coming from vegetables and carrots, right?
Yeah. So carotenoids is carotenoids, and then you have what are called retinoids, which are from animals. So it's the two different sides of the equation. And there's a term called retinol equivalency, and it takes 12 carotenoids to equal 1 retinol.
Okay.
And so it gets a little complicated, but you'd have to eat a room full of carrots to equal what you would get in a bottle of cod liver oil, something like that.
So let me make sure I understand this correctly, because I share it with our private academy group when it comes to retinol and copper. So tell me if I'm correct, and correct me where I'm wrong. It's my understanding that retinol, true vitamin A coming from animal foods, is critical in allowing the copper to be loaded into that ceruloplasmin protein. And if it doesn't get loaded in there, it becomes what they call unbound, and that's why people show up high copper in their blood tests or their hair analysis. But if it gets loaded into the ceruloplasmin, it's able to effectively work with iron and regulate the iron amongst a ton of other things and build energy and things. But is that true that you need that retinol to push that copper into the ceruloplasmin protein?
Yeah. And just about everything that you said was factually correct. Let me just tweak a couple things. This isn't my idea. This is Barber and Cousins, 1987, were the ones that figured out that retinoic acid, I think it was 13 retinoic acid, was essential to load copper into ceruloplasm so that it works. And again, we're making a mockery of this. This is like one of the most important functions in the human body.
Yeah.
And then you think about the fact that most of us were raised on a low-fat diet, which meant no retinol. It's like, oh my God, what are the implications of that?
Right.
But the thing is, the term unbound copper is a misnomer. And so when we have a natural diet, a healthy diet, an ancestral diet, with appropriate proteins and animal fats and things like that, the body knows exactly what to do. We don't have to think about it.
Okay.
But when we're exposed to chemicals, especially medications, and we're exposed to excess iron, it affects the structure of that ceruloplasmin, which is the largest protein in the human body. Think about that for a minute. Largest protein in the human body. And it has 8 copper atoms inside it. Okay? No other protein has that. And so when we're exposed to ascorbic acid or birth control pills or antibiotics or hormone replacement therapy or many other classes of medications, it affects the structure of ceruloplasmin, and the coppers come out.
Okay.
And they are called unbound copper. That's the shorthand.
Okay.
The chemical term for that is unbound from ceruloplasmin, because copper does not exist in an unbound state in the body. That is a complete and egregious lie that there's unbound copper in the human body. It is unbound from ceruloplasmin, but it is bound to albumin, histidine, transcuprine. There's some other protein that it's attached to, but it appears elevated in the blood, and it appears elevated in the hair because it's not properly complexed with ceruloplasmin. And then you've got to start to ask yourself, so why would the body do that?
Yeah.
What is it? What's the potential implications of copper coming outside of the ceruloplasm? Well, it actually goes back to the original design of our system, so that people might notice that if they had an infection, what typically happens is the iron in their blood gets low, and the copper in their blood gets high. Both of those should be about 100. There should be about 100 units of iron and 100 units of copper in a healthy blood sample. But when the iron goes low and the copper goes high, people freak out, and they shouldn't, because that's the genius of our immune system. What is the body doing? The body is sequestering the iron because good bacteria are in the gut. We were talking about those earlier today. And the bad bacteria hang out in the blood. And so the body knows that. The body's really smart. The body says, got to get the iron away from the bacteria. Oh, and let me unleash this copper on those bacteria, because what is anti-pathogenic? Copper.
Silver.
And it, yeah, right. and ding, ding, ding. Very good. Copper kills bacteria.
Okay.
Copper kills viruses. Copper kills fungus, and copper kills parasites. How about that?
Really?
Did you hear anyone talking about that during COVID 1984? I don't think I heard anybody say that.
No.
So that's pretty important. And you know when the first recorded use of copper as an antibiotic was 5,000 BC.
Really? And yet we don't even know that today. That's crazy.
Right. Everything changed 100 years ago. Everything changed 100. It's unbelievable. So I must have been in a former life. I must have been that guy back at 5,000 BC and knew about this. And now, for some reason, I decided to come into this lifetime. I'm like, yeah, it's really important. You know, it's like, yeah. But the important thing is for people to understand is that the perception that iron is low means anemia. That's not true. And the perception that copper is high means toxicity. That's not true. This is all programming. And people need to understand that they're messing with us, and they have been for a long time. And the beauty of the body is that it runs on the energy of bioavailable copper, because copper is the only element on planet Earth that can harness oxygen. Only element to harness it. And it activates it to make energy. It activates it to make enzymes. And it deactivates it to neutralize the oxidants and the exhaust that's given off in our metabolism.
So this is an interesting sort of segue. Is what are your thoughts about all these people that don't have adequate ceruloplasmin protein, but they're doing oxygen-based therapies? Not good? Ozone?
I don't think it's a good idea at all.
Yeah.
And I know it's a very heretical thing to say. And I've got colleagues who swear by ozone. And I'm like, you don't put extra oxygen in a body that's struggling to metabolize it. It doesn't make sense to me. And again, maybe I'm all wet. I don't know. But I've got a pretty good batting average helping people get energy back, which allows them to get their immune system back, which allows them to get their life back. And so I think the tragedy is the people who are promoting extra hydrogen or extra oxygen or whatever it happens to be are ones that don't fully understand what bioavailable copper is, what it does, and how long it's been on this planet. We're talking about something that goes back 2.5 billion years ago. This has been bioavailable copper is why we're having this conversation, because without it, we wouldn't have been able to metabolize the oxygen that started to appear during the Great Oxygen Event. So it's really basic stuff for people to understand how important this mineral is that has been very carefully swept under the table and kept out of the reach of most people, so that the average practitioner doesn't recognize that picture that we were talking about before the break, where there's all these different places that are dependent on copper, but nobody knows that. And I don't have the, I mean, for the cynics out there, trust me, I've got the citations for every one of those green circles, and can tell people exactly how important the role of bioavailable copper is. And again, it's a different language, and we are being raised in the language of pharmaceuticals, and we've lost the language of the farm. And it's amazing that life on a farm is about, repairing and reusing things. Really important. Very basic concept. Repair and reuse. But if you're approaching it from the standpoint of like a factory or a pharmaceutical firm, what you want to do is you want to replace things. You just need some, you got to get a new one. Got to get a new one.
Yeah.
It's a completely different philosophy. Completely different philosophy. And what runs the farm is microbiota, and what runs the pharmaceutical firm?
Chemicals.
It's test tubes.
Test
tubes.
Yeah.
So you have microbiota and test tubes. Those are the two things.
Do we know about, going back to the ceruloplasmin and the vitamin A, the retinol, being able to fully load the copper into that protein? Is retinol and vitamin A the number one way to do that, or is it the only way that copper can be loaded into that protein?
Only way that I know of.
Really?
It's the only way. Which, when you really understand that, then you really begin to wonder, how in the world did they take real vitamin A out of our diet in 1955?
That's crazy, right? I mean, talk about a double-edged sword. You have true vitamin A being taken out, so then you can't utilize copper. The copper in the soils around the world being depleted by 80%. And then on the other side of the equation, on the other side of the coin, you have this iron filing program going on where they're putting iron filings in food. I mean, it almost sounds like a conspiracy, Morley. How could that be? How
could that be? We could have a very different conversation offline about that.
I know, right? Yeah.
And again, what people don't want to know is how long this has been evolving. Let me give you an example. We were talking about the soil earlier. So there's something called nitrogen fixation. It's very important for root systems to get access to nitrogen, because they've got to have that nitrogen in order to function properly. Okay? Nitrogen fixation. 90% of nitrogen fixation is called biological, and the other 10% is called atmospheric. Like, wow, okay, that's interesting. Why are you bringing this up, Morley? Well, it turns out that there's a whole series of enzymes that take place inside the root system to allow the conversion of nitrogen. When it says nitrogen fixation, it means it's putting hydrogens on the nitrogen, so it creates ammonia. And the plant uses that for energy purposes. Okay? Well, the process of loading up hydrogens requires enzymes. Now, Justin, I want you to go way out on a limb. What shiny metal do you think might be required in order to do that biological nitrogen fixation?
Shiny metal. I'm gonna have to guess copper.
Ding, ding, ding. Now that's called biological nitrogen fixation.
Okay.
Now there's another entirely different way of doing it. You can force the nitrogen and the hydrogen together in another chemical reaction, and it uses an enzyme called nitrogenase, nitrogen with an ASE on the end of it. Now, what dark, heavy metal do you think is required to make nitrogenase work?
Dark heavy metal?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It's found in all tall buildings.
Got to be iron?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there was a Nobel Prize awarded to Fritz Haber. I believe it was in 1918,
Mm-hmm.
for nitrogen fixation using iron. And then after the First World War, guess what? They had a lot of things left over. They're called armaments. And what's needed to make armaments explode? NPK. Oh, what a coincidence.
Oh.
So we had all this extra NPK. Why don't we use this NPK that's been made artificially, and we'll put it on the soil? And guess what it does? It blocks copper.
Blocks copper, yeah. That's
So
crazy.
that goes back 100 years. And so 90% of the nitrogen fixation is supposed to be happening in the soil by the microbes working with copper. Thank you very much. And that whole cycle has been changed because copper is pretty important.
Let's go back to some of those slides, because we're coming up on an hour, and I want to make sure we get to the rest of these. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Cool. That's great.
Let me bring that up, because this is so key, so important. Let me bring that up real quick so we can go to that second slide. Let me do this. There we go.
I'm trying to picture the listeners today, like wow, like the whirly gig is going. All right. So this is, again, I keep digging. Go ahead.
Here we go.
Bring up the next slide. There we go. So then there's something called, people have probably heard nitric oxide. Oh, you got to have it. It makes your arteries relax and things like that.
Yeah.
And there are other dysfunctions that affects as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another busy slide. Sorry about that. But what you see in the center is SNO.
Mm-hmm. SNO.
And those are nitrosothiols. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Well, they're really important. They're really important for preventing problems with complex 1 in the lower left-hand corner, and up in the top right-hand corner is something called the permeability transition pore, which is where when that's not happy, that's when the cell starts to die. And it turns out that there's the production of nitric oxide. There's a natural production of nitric oxide inside the mitochondria that nobody talks about. And it turns out that the way this diagram is designed is it makes it appear as though you'll see in the top right hand, you'll see NOS in a blue circle.
Right.
Okay, that's called nitric oxide synthase. It's an enzyme that makes nitric oxide. Real important. Well, it's not a separate enzyme. You see the green arrow below it coming from Roman numeral 4. Turns out that enzyme, cytochrome C oxidase, also has the ability to create nitric oxide.
Okay.
Isn't that cool? How about that? Isn't that wild?
Right? Yeah.
And so, again, there's so much more to the mitochondria than it's just an energy source. It's actually, the mitochondria is where iron gets recycled.
I thought that got recycled in the bone marrow. No?
No.
Well, I guess.
Well, no. You're right. It's the mitochondria of the bone marrow cells.
Oh, I see.
No, it's in the mitochondria, and they're little iron furnaces.
Wow.
So it's really, really important for people to understand that. And so the important thing is that the complex 4 is able to regulate the production of nitric oxide. That's what's really important for people to understand. It's the mitochondria. That's the brains of the outfit.
Yeah.
But the part that drives me crazy is, all right, so we're inside one heart muscle cell, and it's got 10,000 mitochondria. who's coordinating that action? If I don't lose sleep, thank God.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. I rest very soundly at night.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of question that would drive me crazy. It's like, so who's really coordinating those 10,000 mitochondria inside one cell?
That's crazy.
Somebody's coordinating all that activity. That's the genius of the innate intelligence of the human body. So then we get to this next slide, if you want to take a look at it. So
Morley, it's just so crazy to me how much, because we're, like you said before, like we're taught that the mitochondria is basically an ATP production, synthesis going on. But man, like you said, there's so much going on inside of mitochondria. I mean, ATP is just one thing, right? It's mind blowing.
Where do you think cholesterol gets recycled? It's in the mitochondria. Where do people think hormones come from? Come from the mitochondria of the adrenal glands sitting on top of their kidneys. Again, the mitochondria are where it's at.
That's crazy.
Who decides whether the cell is going to live or die? It's the mitochondria. They're in charge of the life cycle of the cell. Again, it's and everyone, all the attention is over on the nucleus. You know what the nucleus is? It's a Xerox machine. It just keeps reproducing protein, but it doesn't think. Somebody else is pushing the button, and it's the mitochondria who are pushing the button. So then we come to melatonin, which is an amazing chemical in our body. And I was reading an article yesterday. You see the black bar with yellow letters. Chemical expression of darkness. That's what melatonin is. It's an amazing chemical. And it's made, people probably are familiar with the pineal gland, like pine cone, pineal gland. That's our connection back to source. Very important connection, by the way. And what we're trained to believe is that the pineal gland is where all the melatonin is made. No. It's made all over the body. And the tissue that makes it, again, most of the tissue in the body makes melatonin. It doesn't get secreted into the bloodstream. The one from the pineal gland does. But all the other organs, thank you very much, I'll just make it and keep it myself. And what it does is it's a powerhouse antioxidant. It is so mind-blowingly important. And what I've got in the inlay there is all the things that that melatonin promotes in the way of antioxidant functions. And again, you'll see that there's a red line with a hash mark that says, we're going to stop this nitric oxide synthase. Well, the significance of that is that melatonin helps to regulate things going on inside the mitochondria. And what's important for people to understand is you cannot make melatonin if you don't have tyrosinase. And what's tyrosinase? It's a copper enzyme with 4 copper atoms in the center. And so copper is all over the mitochondria. Absolutely paramount, and yet nobody's talking about it. And if the immune system doesn't have access to copper and doesn't have access to energy, then the immune system doesn't work right. And that's an established fact.
So Morley, going back to what you were saying before, just so that I remember correctly, the mitochondria itself, there could be anywhere from a few hundred to tens of thousands of mitochondria per cell, depending on if it's a heart or brain cell or something, or an egg. But all of these mitochondria require 50,000 copper atoms.
Yep.
Jeez.
And so the bookends are 300 mitochondria to 2 million in the brain cells.
In the brain
neurons.
Okay. I thought there was the most in like an egg or something.
The mature egg has 600,000.
Oh, okay.
But there's tissue in the substantia nigra. That's a brain region. Substantial nigra, darkness. Think melatonin might be important there. Oh, wow. Chemical expression of darkness, substantia nigra. And so, but those neurons have 2 million mitochondria in them. Again, so you live in Los Angeles or in that area. How many people are in the general um, area of Los Angeles. What is it, 14 million?
Yeah, it's something like 14, 17 million, something like that.
Okay. So let's just take 2 million of those people. And there's somebody coordinating all of those 2 million people. Think about that.
That's nuts.
2 million, a mitochondria is called an organelle. So there's 2 million organelles that are somehow communicating with each other and keeping things in harmony. It's like, it's very humbling when you start to piece together the numbers.
I know. And like you were saying before, it's talk about humbling, like who's managing all of these mitochondrial processes and this copper, like who's managing all that. So going back to something practical for people, by the way, you did a really great show on my friend Matt Blackburn's podcast about vitamin D with Jim Stevenson, I think.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Great show at Mito Life Radio. Go and listen to that one. But I'm guessing as with vitamin D, taking exogenous supplements of that, I would also probably think that you wouldn't be a fan of taking melatonin exogenously in pill form, right?
No, absolutely not. No. Again, all of what people don't understand is that all of these supplements that are available to us, like K2 and melatonin and P5P, and we can go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Those supplements are designed to be activated inside our body. And you know what you got to have in order to activate all of those things? You got to have bioavailable copper. And they know we don't have the bioavailable copper, and that's why they're selling us what appears to be the same thing. But if you don't have the natural ability to activate it, you're not really going to get the full benefit of the activated form. Right? And I know people that are chemically oriented are saying, chemically it's the same, but biologically it's not, and energetically it's not.
Mm-hmm. So now you guys are probably wondering, let's leave this as a little teaser for them, Morley. Okay, people are thinking, where do I get copper? So we've talked about that in previous shows, where to get copper. But let me just tell you guys, go to rcp123.org and you'll learn exactly where to get copper. So I just want to give that out there for people because I want people to join up there and follow this protocol.
Appreciate that.
Let's go to, is this the last slide? Okay, so that was a 4 of 4. That was the last one before that.
Yeah, that was one.
Wow.
And I think it's important for people to realize just how dependent our mitochondria are on bioavailable copper. And that's nowhere in the textbooks. That's nowhere on the internet. That's nowhere in the clinical rounds of training of doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so basic. It's very important for people to realize that when we have access to real food and the nutrients that we highlight in that protocol that you've been talking about,
mm-hmm.
that there's an absolute design in our body. And the body knows exactly what to do with these nutrients. And it's like, thank you very much. I can take over now.
Mm-hmm.
And what is consistently across the board for people who do the RCP is their energy comes back. They're able to have a life again. And then their symptoms start to melt away. And sometimes it's in a matter of months. Sometimes it takes people 18 months to 2 years. But again, the body has the capacity, the natural internal ability to heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're right back at the farm. Rebuild and reuse the parts that we know what to do with. Mm-hmm. And that's the genius of the body.
Yeah, guys, so go to rcp123.org, and in that manual, you'll find the best sources of food-based copper, because it's not something you want to just run out and get a supplement from, or take a supplement, or even a homeopathic. I get it from food. And like what you're saying, Morley, is it's fascinating because we've all been trained to just, I'm low, I need to sleep, I'll take melatonin. I'm low and I don't get enough sun, I'll take some vitamin D. Or I'll take a copper supplement. But what you're saying is like, this is the work that we all have to do, is let's figure out how the body works, supply it the building blocks and the environment and the lifestyle, and create an environment where the body can work properly, and your body can make all of this, everything it needs that you supplement, it should be able to make that, right?
Absolutely. And it's important for people to realize that as we age, we lose copper, and as we age, we accumulate iron. Again, it's not complicated. And so that reversal, as copper's going down and iron's going up, well, that causes us to lose energy. We can't make the same level of energy when there needs to be greater balance and symmetry between the copper and the iron. And when we lose that symmetry, that's when we really start to fatigue, lose energy, and that's when the aches and pains start, because symptoms are an expression of underproducing mitochondria.
And it's all about energy, right? That's what
Absolutely
it's all about.
About energy. Energy changes substance. It's so, and the elegance of someone like Douglas Wallace to figure that out, and really understand how subtle the shift in energy can be, and how it affects every aspect of the cellular function. It's amazing.
And guys, also too, in that root cause protocol, if you download it, which I recommend that you do, he also talks, Morley, about things that you probably might be taking now that the majority of people in the natural world will tell you are good, that cause that ceruloplasmin protein to, I don't know, fold to the left, fold to the right, become misshapen, to dump copper out. These things cause the copper to be what we talked about before, unbound. So there's lots of things that you may be taking now that you should probably get off if you want to utilize copper, in the root cause protocol. Talks exactly about that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to reinforce your the products that you were talking about in the break. So that what does dirty electricity really like to play with? The excess iron in our body. And what helps our lymph to flow better is copper. And what will slow it down? Excess iron. I'm a big fan of the rebounder. We've got one. But people need to understand that when things are flowing, you've got energy. And it's the lymphatic system is as important as the circulatory system. You probably know that. And that a lot of your listeners don't know that. And so that's where a lot of the problems occur. A very dear friend of mine, who's also a graduate of my program, she's a nurse practitioner, but she's also a lymphatic specialist. She says 95% of people have blockages in their lymph system. It's a really serious breakdown in the system. Wow. And if the lymphatic system starts to get sludgy, it really it affects the health dramatically. Absolutely has a profound effect on people's health. Yeah,
that's true. You want to take a couple questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool.
If they're there.
All right, guys. What we'll do, if you're watching on Facebook, and I think we're on 2 pages right now on Facebook, unless Zuckerberg has taken us off, which hopefully he hasn't. But if you're watching on Facebook and you want to ask a question, come over to our YouTube channel. Just go to extremehealthradio.com/YouTube, and that'll redirect you to our channel. And then I'll ask questions from there, because it's easier. And if you're on YouTube watching, type them in all caps so that I don't miss them. But I'm going to lead off, Morley, with a couple of my own questions. So one is that one I was sort of alluding to before the break. It's tiring me out to try to find a place. I mean, what do I got to do? Go to leeches or cut myself? Like, they're all testing for COVID. What's up? Is there a way around that? Have you heard?
Right. The only way that I know around it for sure would be to Google mobile phlebotomist and whatever community that you live in. And there are people all over the country, phlebotomists, who come to people's home. It's really designed for seniors who can't get out.
Okay.
But I think it would be another viable option for being able to do that. And I'm not aware that you can go to a blood center and not get tested for COVID, although I think that's going to come to a stop. I would assume sometime around the election. I think we're going to find that we don't need to test for this anymore because the numbers just don't substantiate it.
Okay.
But
because that's my concern.
The formal route, I think there's a very good chance you will get tested, and I agree. I would be very hesitant about that. But like here in where we live in North Carolina, there is a mobile phlebotomist, and we've come to learn that there are many across the country. So it's just something that people aren't readily aware of, and it would be a very good way to do it and not have to worry about the testing process.
I wonder if you have to sort of get sort of personal with a mobile phlebotomist, because when I looked at it, it looked like the websites, at least still, that was, sort of aggregating these people locally in my area, where it said also on their website that they tested for it. And it's like, I haven't donated since February, and I'd like to donate, but I'm still running up against this problem. So I guess just maybe some research.
What I would do is schedule the appointment, have someone come to your home,
okay,
and then have the conversation with the phlebotomist.
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, another question I had from someone in our academy this morning. She was asking if blood donation is the only way to dump iron. And we've had a couple people on our show say that you can do it in a minor way through sweating, but I wouldn't think you could dump enough iron through sweating, right? It's
right. So we no, I get this question all the time. So when you get into the iron research and you begin to understand the dynamics of iron, the body holds on to iron in a big way, despite the programming that we're all anemic. In fact, the iron just doesn't leave the body the way they say it does.
Uh-huh.
It may not show up in the blood, but it's in the tissue, and the tissue is where it's at. That's the key. So the study after study after study will tell you that the only way to have a significant change in iron status is through blood loss. It's the only known mechanism to reduce iron status in the body. And so the interesting thing about it is that copper is supposed to be in our diet, and there's a natural mechanism called bile that allows it to get removed naturally. The copper that we don't need goes into our feces and gets excreted. And that's a natural mechanism that goes back to the beginning of time. And so copper, we just need a little bit, supposed to get it in our food, and we have a natural mechanism called bile action to get rid of it.
Okay.
Iron, technically, we're supposed to get the download from mom at birth. And we're supposed to, in our formative years, up until the time we're about 15, maybe 18 at the most, we're supposed to add to it through our diet. And then we're not supposed to get iron in our diet ever again. We're supposed to recycle it. That's mind-blowing. 95% of the iron that we need every day is supposed to be recycled. Absolutely contrary to what we've been trained to understand.
Yeah.
And so only 5%, 1 milligram of iron, 1 milligram of iron. And the guy that figured this out, his name was Dr. Weintraub. He was a famous physician scientist at University of Utah in the 50s. He was the one that figured out we need 24.4 milligrams of iron every day in order to make the next day's batch of red blood cells. He figured it out.
Okay.
He's the guy that figured it out, Maxwell Weintraub. And he was a genius. And this idea that we lose all our iron because of blood loss, and especially women, oh my goodness, booga wooga bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's so much confusion about that.
Yeah.
And there is a legitimate blood loss with the menstrual cycle. I'm not a Luddite around that, but the testing of iron status is horrific on this planet because it's all based on blood and not based on tissue levels. And Bruce Ames, world-renowned scientist who's still living, when he was at Berkeley for most of his career, he was the most quoted scientist on the planet, Bruce Ames. You can look him up. And he wrote an article with a colleague of his, David Kalilia, in 2004, and it was revealing that there can be 10 times more iron in the tissue than appears in the blood. And that's a big difference. tenfold difference.
Tenfold.
And so you can lose a certain amount of iron through sweat, and there are chelators that can be used, like apolilactoferrin, or a friend of mine that I was talking about before, Karen Goodall, developed a product called iDetox, or you have IP6. These are recognized ways to help pull excess iron out. But those are like garden hoses compared to a fire hose, which is what the blood donation represents.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
That makes
Gosh,
sense?
There's so much that I could go off of on that one, but if I do that, then we won't get to these questions. So let's see here. So this one's about more sort of testing. Morley, my girlfriend is 44, gallbladder removed years ago. She has PCOS symptoms. Cycle is non-consistent, and she is also experiencing dry elbows. She eats grass-fed liver weekly and fermented sauerkraut. And his question is, what blood work should she start with?
You can go to requestatest.com, and in the search bar put Full Monty Iron Panel, and what will pop up is a blood test that I helped cobble together. I don't derive any income from it, but it gives people the ability to measure where their iron status is, where their zinc is, where their copper status is, magnesium, vitamin A and D. There's 12 different parts to that blood test. All 12 as a collective whole give you an understanding of what's my iron status in my body. And iron is not a one-trick pony. Oh, what's my ferritin? Or, what's my serum iron? Oh, what's my hemoglobin? You got to look at all 12 parts to get a collective understanding of what's going on. In a situation, PCOS, right out of the blocks, we know she has iron overload in her uterus, hands down. The dry skin on the elbows would suggest some kind of either psoriasis or eczema. It sounds like more like psoriasis. Again, that's a lack of retinol. And even though she's getting the retinol in her diet, there may be some other factors that need to be considered in that process. And I would bet at 44. She probably was not raised on a high-fat diet. She's probably eaten, for the most part, a low-fat diet, as most people do, especially women, because they think that if they eat fat, they're going to get fat. That's not how it works, but that's the mind playing games. And so the PCOS alone, what I would encourage this individual to do is Google PCOS oxidative stress. And what's going to pop up is thousands of articles that are going to demonstrate how iron creates oxidative stress to create the syndrome called PCOS.
Yeah, good stuff, Morley. And for those that are interested too, in your protocol, you talk about this iron recycling system, endothelial reticulo something system, and there's a whole bunch of enzymes that are required, right, for the iron to go back to the red blood cells, to go back to the bone marrow to create more red blood cells. So it's a whole system that I would look at, and you described that in the root cause protocol. Okay, here's one from Anthony Childs. He's a member of our academy. Great guy. He asks, does HCQ block the body's ability to develop more red blood cells in hemolytic anemia?
Great question. I'm not sure. That is a wonderful question. I'm not sure I know. I just know that HCQ has the ability to gobble up and chelate iron, but it also can chelate copper as well.
Yeah.
So in hemolytic anemia, what you've got is, for people who have seen the TV show Lucy and Ethel at the Chocolate Factory, and they're stuffing the chocolates all over their body, and then the manager comes out and says, "Speed it up, boys." Well, speed it up, boys is hemolytic anemia. That there's the red blood cell is supposed to live 120 days. It's very busy during those 120 days. But if there is copper deficiency, and these terms are clinically significant, copper deficiency and magnesium deficiency, either one or both, causes the lifespan to go from 120 days down to 20 days. And when the lifespan is 20 days, there's a faster turnover rate trying to keep up with the demand for oxygen delivery, because that's what the red blood cells are. They're waiting, right? And so speeded up boys is a breakdown, an accelerated breakdown of red blood cells happening 6 times faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's 6 times 20? 120, right? So there's a turnover rate 6 times faster. And do you think if waiters were working in a restaurant and they were running 6 times faster than walking, do you think there's a chance that food might slip, or the plates would break, or dishes would fall off? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so the red blood cells that are running 6 times faster are going to make mistakes. Well, if you're making mistakes with iron and oxygen, boom.
Yeah.
And so HCQ, as I'm kind of trying to piece it together as I'm having this exchange with you, I'm guessing that HCQ, I would think it would be of benefit. I don't know that it's used for that, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has, again, 65-year track record of use for malaria. I think also for lupus and a few other conditions. I don't recall it being used for hemolytic anemia, but I don't know why not.
So it's interesting. So 2 of the things that you're saying they're causing the red blood cells to not be able to live as long is a lack of bioavailable copper and a lack of magnesium. And that's what's driving this whole process, right?
Right. And so the thing is, think about it. The red blood cell is carrying oxygen, right?
Uh-huh.
And so how does the red blood cell make energy? It makes energy anaerobically. It doesn't use oxygen to make energy, not like in our mitochondria. And when you study anaerobic metabolism, there's 10 enzymes, and all 10 of them, or 8 of the 10 of them, 8 of the 10 of them require magnesium to work. So that to make energy in the red blood cell, you got to have magnesium. That's why the magnesium in the red blood cell test is so important. Where does copper fit into it? When you're carrying oxygen, there's always going to be accidents.
Yeah.
And the hemoglobin is going to react with the oxygen, and it's going to create oxidants. And there's a component of our blood, it's called erythrocyte SOD, superoxide dismutase. Well, the first thing that happens to oxygen is it takes on an extra electron. It becomes superoxide, in the same way that a child with autism would be hyperactive. Think of it as superactive. Well, that's oxygen, when it gets an extra electron, becomes hyperactive, but they call it superoxide. And that superoxide dismutase is needed to keep things in check. It's one of the most important enzymes in the human body, superoxide dismutase, and it's never tested.
Never tested or talked about. Okay, this one's a good one about graying, premature graying. Is premature graying...
I wouldn't know that.
Yeah. Is premature graying of hair the telltale sign of long-term copper deficiency?
Well, it's a telltale sign of hydrogen peroxide buildup,
mm-hmm.
and hydrogen peroxide builds in a body that has trouble with bioavailable copper. There are some people who claim that B5 will solve the graying. Some people who say that there's amino acids that will correct it. I can't remember whether it's tyrosine or tryptophan. But at the end of the day, it's a buildup of hydrogen peroxide. And in the world of Chinese medicine, the hair vitality is a function of kidney vitality. And so people are probably thinking, well, his kidneys aren't so happy, are they? But compared to my relatives, I'm an absolute beacon of energy and excitement. But the thing is, I think the hair loss is one of the most confusing parts of metabolism, because what a lot of people think is if you can just get your ferritin levels up, then you're going to be fine. It really turns out that what's important is the follicle needs to be able to make energy, and in order to sustain that, it's got to have the right nutrients. One of them, of course, is going to be the ability to keep the hydrogen peroxide at a modicum level. And so, yeah, there's no question that copper is directly involved in that process.
Okay, cool. Two more questions. One is, the question is how much copper should be, or retinol should be consumed daily?
So it's really interesting. When you look at literature from the 30s and 40s, they were talking about copper intakes of as high as 5 to 7 milligrams a day.
Oh, wow.
And now in the modern era,
Right.
they talk about 1 to 2 milligrams a day.
Okay.
Leslie Clavet, who's probably the most noted authority on the planet, still living, just a genius around copper, he promotes 2 to 3 milligrams a day.
Okay.
He says that's a really good amount. Again, the trick is there's no supplement out there that I'm aware of that actually delivers the right kind of copper to build up your bioavailable copper. And that's a source of frustration for everyone, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the issue about retinol, again, Weston A. Price is probably the most noted authority on the planet, who did a study with his wife about ancestral diets. And they were regularly recording intakes of thousands and thousands of milligrams of retinol a day. Again, in the modern era, around 3,000 milligrams is or 3,000 IUs. IUs is what's considered acceptable. And I think there's a lot of controversy and confusion about, vitamin A toxicity. And again, it gets into a lot of confusion about how vitamin A is metabolized, what are the enzymes, what does glyphosate do to those enzymes, and things like that. But I think people are on solid ground to get 3,000 IUs a day.
Okay, cool. Final question. What about kids and the RCP program?
Great question. It certainly would depend on what their age is. If they're really young, it's going to be a fraction of what the adult would get. The RCP is really designed for adults, and then for the younger children, kind of like 5 to 15 or something like that, you'd be doing maybe 50% of the RCP. When you start to get under that, number of people have asked us to develop an RCP for infants, an RCP for kids, pediatric age, under like 7 or 8. So we're in the process of doing that. But I think that what's important is real food, food that's in season, food that has not been overcooked, and all the other attributes that we could use to describe it. But I think it's important that the food be coming from either a farm, from farmers markets, or from the perimeter of the supermarket at the very least. But it's got to be organic. And so at least you get the best possible base of nutrients that you can. But the part that's probably most missing for kids is access to retinol. And little children don't know that they're not supposed to like eating beef liver, or they don't know that they're not supposed to like eating cod liver oil, things like that. So I think it's a lot of the trepidation that parents have is that they don't like it, so then they project that on their kids. And I've had many clients that have been surprised, genuinely shocked, at how much their kids clamor for the organ meats and clamor for access to butter and eggs and cod liver oil and things like that, which are really rich sources of retinol, as you know. And so it's a good source. I think the Weston A. Price Foundation has a menu for children So I would use that as a baseline guide for the dietary side. And then I would just start to follow the protocol, but I would maybe cut it in quarter for the really young children and cut it in half for the older children, and then go full bore for the adolescents to young adults.
And it's also worth noting too, if you're going to feed your kid processed food of any kind, which, you know, we all do, but if that happens, always check the iron content. If you have two foods that are basically identical, you know, and there's one that contains, you know, 4 or 5 milligrams of iron and one that has none, go for that one, right? Be aware of that.
Yeah, a real simple rule of thought is you should not be eating food that's coming from a box, from a can, from a frozen food section, or from your car window. Those would be foods to avoid.
Like Jack LaLanne, right? Didn't he say that?
Yeah.
It's been around forever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Morley,
except he could pull 97 boats and I can't.
Didn't he pull like 70 boats on his 70th birthday or something?
Yeah, it was. I actually think it was in his 90s, but it was just it was an unbelievable feat of endurance and strength. It was amazing.
And one thing people will say, just in closing here, people will say, well, why should I have to donate blood? That doesn't make any sense. God would have created a way for us to be healthy without having to donate blood. How did our ancestors live in such a way as to not donate blood? Well, we've artificially been altering our environment. We're adding iron filings to the food, like you said. So we're getting all this excess iron. And when you artificially manipulate your environment, we have to do things artificially to restore health. So it's, you know, I'm sure Jack LaLanne lived in a time when there's way less iron in his food, you know?
I think that's true. And I think you make a really good point. It's really confusing. We live in a era where we've been trained, we're anemic. And this idea of giving blood, that just sounds so, well, when you go back a couple hundred years ago, it was very common for physicians to bloodlet their patients. That was a very established practice. It wasn't unusual at all, especially like in the colonial days. It was done all the time. But then it fell out of favor, and then everything started to change in the food system and the farming system. And so it's an ancient modality that's been used, but it just hasn't been in favor in the last 100 years, certainly in this country, but in much of the planet. And so it's just revitalizing and dusting off techniques that have been used historically. And I think as people appreciate and begin to study the food labels, and they start to see how much iron, especially like in cereals and grains, there's a staggering amount of iron in those foods, and we just didn't know that. We weren't aware of that. And so as you begin to really appreciate that, then I think you'll be much more open to these options for beginning to lower it. Because again, the body system that you were referring to, the reticuloendothelial system, that sounds really complicated, right? And it has the initials RES. And when I understood after studying it for over a year that it was a recycling system, I just renamed it recycling. It's still RES, but it just means recycling, and people can remember that. So the key is knowing that iron is meant to be recycled, not to be eaten. And what the literature is very clear about, if you want to control the amount of iron coming into your system, close your mouth.
I like that. That's easy, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Morley, thanks so much for being on. And for those that are watching, I see there's still some more questions coming in. And what I would recommend you do is go to RCP123, download the root cause protocol, because a lot of the questions I'm seeing come in, I know are answered on that. So go to rcp123.org and just put your name and email address in, and you'll get access to the entire protocol for free. So Morley, thanks.
And there's also there's a community they can join, the RCP community.
Oh, cool.
And we have a Q&A every other week, so people can ask questions, and we have a live session, and it's become a very dynamic community that helps people get the questions that they have on their mind, but then introduce some new ideas taking each time we have a session. So I think it might be a good option for people to join.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so cool. Yeah, join his community, guys. I'm telling you, this is the most prolific person. We've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I don't know who's more on the cutting edge than Morley. Every time I talk to him, he's sending me articles, sending me stuff. I hear him on other podcasts, and he's just constantly doing research. And this is the kind of person you want, trying to figure, not someone who's selling you supplements and they have something to sell you, so they're going to talk about the benefits of it, but someone who's truly neutral. So I would recommend this as your foundation of your health, the root cause protocol. So sign up to that. And Morley, have fun on Robert's Scott Bell's podcast today. I hope it's a good one. And
I'm looking forward to it.
And thanks for being on. Outside of that, yeah.
And thank you for the clip you did of Patrick Timpone and Ray Pete. That was outstanding.
Oh, good.
Great information there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're
In
so
fact,
welcome.
I'm going to be talking with Patrick Timpone next Tuesday. We're going to actually we should do this for you. We're going to do a hair test, blood test analysis live.
Oh,
and,
cool.
Yeah, we should do that for you or your wife or maybe your kids or whatever. But that would be fun for the listeners to get a sense of what the process of discovery is from the testing side.
That would be awesome. Well, Morley, awesome. Thank you again. And just so you know, you have an open-ended invitation to be on our show. So I think I sent you the schedule, the booking link. So if you want to book maybe every couple months, because we're only doing shows once a week now, feel free to do that, because your information, I think, is on the cutting edge.
I think I did that, but I'm going to go back and double check now.
Okay.
I remember you doing that, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to the chance to have those exchanges. And I'm stunned that we've had 7 conversations, so I have to get all the links to those 7 conversations.
Oh, cool.
I want to make sure people have access to all those exchanges.
Yeah, for sure. I'll send you the links to those. Aside from the other radio show you're going to do with Robert today, are you going to do anything fun on a Friday? Any fun plans?
We have some fun plans for Saturday and Sunday, but tonight is just going to be a quiet ease into the weekend. It's been a pretty wild week, and I think next week is going to be a blockbuster. So I'm going to take advantage of the time off.
Awesome. All right, Morley, thank you so much again, my friend. I am in full support of your work, and you're just an awesome guy, and I appreciate your humbleness and your research. So thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Really enjoyed it, as always.
All right, thanks, Morley. Have a great one.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye. All right, guys, there you go. Morley Robbins. I hope you enjoyed that show. We have 2 other commercials that we're going to run, but I think what I'm going to do, this podcast, for those who don't know, this podcast comes out on Sunday night, Pacific time, around 10 o'clock Pacific time on Sunday night. So, whoops. And so what I'll do is I want to share with you, there's a bunch of Labor Day sales. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Facebook, yeah, I think that's all we're broadcasting on. There's a bunch of Labor Day sales going on right now. Let me just read to you a few of them so you guys can see a lot of cool stuff, like big discounts on a lot of the stuff that we offer. So let me just read to you some of these. I think you're going to really enjoy these. So let's see. The Relax Sauna. I would recommend buying one of those. There's $125 off from now until the 7th. That's this Monday, September 7th, 2020, and when Labor Day ends at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. And the code for that is Labor Day 20. Labor Day 20, and it's all caps and no spaces. Labor Day 20, and you get $125 off of this Relax Far Infrared Sauna. This is the one that we use, and so I'm telling you guys, we don't really run sales of the sauna very often, but when there is one, this is one of the practices I would highly recommend getting into at least 3 or 4 days a week, because like Morley was saying, when we alter our environment and change, the environment that we live in, we have to do extraordinary things to detox. And sauna therapy has been shown through thousands of years to detoxify heavy metals, chemicals, poisons, all of these things that get stored in our fat cells and our lymphatic fluid. So the Relax Sauna is $125 off Labor Day 20 until September 7th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. The other one is my friend Matt Blackburn. His products, all of the MitoLife products, are 25% off. So if you go through our link, that'll support our show. And all of these that you can see are going to be at biochargeme.com. And so Matt's got awesome products, enzyme products, a polyunsaturated fatty acid, vitamin E product to help detoxify fatty acids. He's got the Shilajit, which is amazing. I'm like, talk about another way of chelating excess iron is Shilajit. And Matt's completely turned on to this stuff. So he's offering a Labor Day 20, same discount code, Labor Day 20, 25% off. But it only, if you go through our link, that will be what supports us. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, these links are in the description below. And I put a little section in our store called, I think, Labor Day 2020 at biochargeme.com. But then also the Chili Pad is running a sale until the 14th for $200 off. And the Chili Pad, if you guys don't know what this thing is, it's a way of cooling your bed down to let you get into that deep REM type sleep. And we have one. It's awesome. And it cools your bed down. It's awesome for this time of year. And it uses water to do that. It's just a great product. And we have that on top of our Magnetico. So it's a good one. This is $200 off with the code 3-day weekend. That's 3, like the number 3 day weekend at Chili Pad. So all of these will be available at biochargeme.com. And then Defender Shield, other products we have. These are great EMF protection products for your cell phone, for your laptop. This is 15% off, or $15 off any orders over $100. So that's Labor 15, Labor 15. Savvy Rest, if you're looking for an organic bed. These are available. Everything, again, is on biochargeme.com. Savvy Rest is offering Labor 20, 20% off any of their organic beddings, which is awesome. And I love those guys. Savvy Rest has all organic bedding and furniture. Clearlight Saunas is running a sale too. Let me see how much theirs is. Theirs is $500 to $700 off. Whoa. They're infrared saunas. So many of you guys have done the research and you're really interested in the wooden saunas. And we offer those on BioChargeMe as well. So that, I think, is included in the link. So if you go to biochargeme.com, you'll see the links there. And then the True Dark sunglasses, which are the blue blocking glasses that I have, those are 15% off. And that's back to screen 15, back to screen 15 there. So you'll get 15% off. And then the Sauna Space sauna as well as a 10% off. That's awesome. So that is starting this Saturday through Monday from 9/5 to 9/7, 2020. And the coupon is, actually, I don't even think you need a coupon. So cool. Yeah, that's a 10% off. So Sauna Space has the near infrared saunas, which is cool. And that uses near infrared technology, which is completely different than far infrared. We do not have one of these saunas, although I would like to get one and have the near infrared and the far infrared both. But yeah, so that's 10% off. So go to extremehealthradio.com/670. And I'll put links on Sunday night. That link will be active, 670. But in the meantime, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, there should be links down below with these coupon codes. And if you're listening on audio, all of these coupon codes will be available on Sunday night. And then most of these deals will go all the way through the end of day Monday, which is September 7th, 2020. So I just want to let you guys know about that. I would recommend getting the far infrared sauna though. That's $125 off. So if you're able to do that, please, because it's one of those things where, altering your environment and putting together these health protocols, turning your home into a healing retreat center is really, really important, especially in today's world. So I'd really recommend getting something like relaxed far infrared sauna. Get these tools, mitigate your environment, guys. Get one of the Greenwave filters, get some of the things from Defender Shield, block the EMF coming off your computers, block the EMF coming off your cell phones. This is really, really important. So let's see, way above says, what is RCP Institute? RCP Institute is the Root Cause Protocol Institute from Morley Robbins. And I would check in with him, rcp123.org. And you can get access to that. And so we implement inside the academy a lot of his principles and most of his principles, as well as other practitioners we've had in our show talking about the frequency of light and how that impacts mitochondrial health too, because light is, according to Dr. George Wallace, has a huge impact on mitochondrial function and the ability for the mitochondria to create ATP and that electron transport chain that has to happen in all 5 complexes, controlled by light. So light and minerals, these are like the top of the food chain when it comes to figuring out getting to the root cause of your health. And so as you can imagine, with all of everything that I've been exposed to over the years, a lot of this stuff is really kind of different from each other, and I'm bringing everything together inside the academy and putting all the pieces together, and it's just been amazing to work with you guys on Friday mornings. We have our live sessions in our academy and helping everyone out in the forums, and we just put together an entire COVID-19 database. So this thing is crazy. If you guys want to check out what's in that, we have a YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it at extremehealthradio.com/670, but it's a video I did explaining what is in that. And I link to direct sources. I don't know if you guys know this, but the CDC actually came out the other day. I don't know why they did this, but they actually said that of the 161,000 people that allegedly have died of big C, little v, of those 161,000 people, 94% of those had an average of 2.6 comorbidities going on. So that means people that had big C, little v also had other things like high blood pressure, diabetes, dementia, and some of these other cofactors, comorbidities they call them. So that means that only 6% of those 161,000 people that have, quote, died of big C, little v actually only had that as their only contributing factor, which represents less than 10,000 people. So we've been shutting down the entire economy, shutting everything down for about 9,400 people that allegedly have died still. I'd say prove it to me. But 94,000 or 9,000 people out of 327 million, that's a 0.0000, I think it's 4029% death rate. I mean, this is absolutely incredible, guys. And so I'm sharing links inside this COVID resource section directly to those sources. So you can take those sources to your friends and say, look, this is exactly what they're saying. You can say something and have the science to back it up. And that's available for free. And we're adding to it every single week because new information is coming out all the time about this whole thing that's going on. I don't want to say the trigger word, but I'm linking directly to source material here. And that's all available for you, from the testing to the mask wearing to the reporting of the news on the death rates and all of that stuff, and the benefits, or not the health effects of wearing a mask and all that stuff. So this is really important to understand what's actually being propagated to us. And the way I look at all that is like a courtroom. You're making claims, right? Okay, you want to say 161,000 people. Even if that many people died, just prove it, right? Just prove it. Prove everything that you're saying and I'll believe it. But the problem is they can't. You absolutely cannot. We had a Dr. Kaufman on the show a couple weeks ago, and he was applying what they call Koch's postulates to this entire big C, little v thing. And it has to go through a series of 5 steps in order for you to say that this particular virus causes a death, right? And the first step is isolating the virus so you know what you're dealing with. He's conclusively saying that they haven't even isolated this virus yet. So steps 2, 3, 4, and 5, irrelevant, because they haven't even completed step 1 yet. And you can look inside our academy. We were able to get an exclusive copy of that video because they took it down off YouTube, but it's available inside our academy, and it's called The Rooster in the River of Rats. So that's also a part of that too. So that's super, super important. So A lot of stuff being propagated to us, and in the same way that a judge and a court and a jury would have to have conclusive evidence of someone committing a crime beyond a shadow of a doubt, the same holds true in the courtroom of your mind, right? There must be conclusive evidence beyond a shadow of a doubt that big C little v is causing this many deaths. And if you can't prove that, I'm not going to invest my emotional energy and my time and effort and energy into worrying and stressing about something that can't even be proven. So this is the way you got to look at it. Just look at it like a courtroom. You have to prove this stuff. And so anyway, there's a whole big C little v reference material section inside the Extreme Health Academy. Again, with source material that we're adding to on a weekly basis, linking directly to quotes from the CDC, the NIH, the WHO, and clips of all of these people giving talks and sharing what's actually going on. So I highly recommend joining the Academy, guys. For right now, there's a 2-week trial if you want, and you get access to it for free. The coupon code is EHR, Extreme Health Radio, EHR14. And you can get access to it right now, right away for free. And then it's after that, the trial, it's the regular monthly cost. So, and you can also pause your account anytime you wish to. If you want to keep your account, but you want to pause it for a few months, you can do that as well. And there's a money back guarantee too. So come and join us, guys. It's so much fun in there. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this show, episode 670. I'll put links to all of that at extremehealthradio.com/670. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend and everything that you have going on. Make sure to check out our store too for the coupons, or the coupon codes, I should say, for the Labor Day sales going on right now. Lots of cool sales. And just if you want to support our work too, go to our store, Biocharge Me, and just click over, because I wasn't able to put all of the products that are on sale. Like, for example, the blue blocking glasses. This one is from Blue Blocks. I'm sure they're probably running a sale, but I wasn't able to put it on our store. So go to biochargeme.com and then click over to any place that you are interested in making a purchase from and looking for a Labor Day sale. And that way we'll get credit for that, and it'll help support our work, and you'll get a discount as well. So, and a cool product, and it'll support people like Andy who make these great products. So you guys are awesome. I really appreciate you guys so much. This audio version will come out, new audio versions come out every Sunday night. And then the other 6 days of the week on iTunes and Stitcher or Spotify are old past shows. And so we recycle those 6 days a week. And then Sunday evening is the newest show that we do live here on Friday morning. So I love you guys so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to go eat some lunch. I'm going to go work out. And then we're going to a friend's house to go swimming with our kids today. So that'll be a lot of fun. Thanks again for supporting our work. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it so much. So thank you again for thinking of us before you go purchase on Amazon, clicking through our link first. Everything remains the same for you, but we'll get a commission for your order. So thank you for that. And thanks for checking out our store, biochargeme.com, and supporting our work. I really appreciate that so much. So come over and say hello in the Academy. I love to say hi and support you and help you with your health. So come and join us, extremehealthacademy.com. And I'll see you next Friday at 10:45. All right, love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or